All right, so at this point, you should be able to see the first slide. Again, welcome to all of you. Uh, this is the Mission-Based Affordable Housing Training Program. My name is Tyra Johnson. I will be moderating today's program. We also have Stephanie Simeon, who will be our lead in terms of this program. I'm from List, Western New York, and Stephanie, can you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Stephanie Simeon. I'm the executive director of Heart of the City Neighborhoods, and I'm excited to be the lead um, uh, speaker during this series because I am hoping to share my 15 years of affordable housing experience with those of you who are interested in being part of the program.
Excellent. So we have some goals for this program today, and that's to educate both faith-based and service organizations on affordable housing. We want to really just assist you in understanding all the complexities of affordable housing, and there's many things to consider, so we hope to break it down in an easy, digestible format. And we want to have an opportunity for you to explore your goals. So this is going to be more like a workshop than a webinar. We have several sessions after this one. This one will serve as an overview, our first session. Our second session will go into our development team, the players that you need to make sure your project's successful, and all the different, all the different milestones for your project. We'll also talk a lot about community engagement, how you need to interact with stakeholders that may be part of the project, either proponents or perhaps even opposition of the project. Uh, we'll go into more detail in terms of the feasibility analysis for your project, market and feasibility analysis. And finally, in our last session, we'll have an introduction to finance. We say introduction because the finance part of affordable housing is very complicated, but you will get to know the bare bones. You'll have a general understanding, enough so that you can look at a pro forma and know what you're talking about, at least
Mhm.
the basics. So with that said, these are the goals of today's session, and Stephanie, I will ask you to take it from here.
Sure. We want to start with we want to just start with a brief introduction, as Tyra said earlier, and talk about the responsibilities in the way to structure residential development. Um, so a lot of the things that we want to really go through today is just really rudimentary. So like, what is affordable housing? Why would you want to do it? And just things that kind of get you started to thinking in that way. And then we want to kind of wrap things up by laying the foundation for understanding the critical elements of affordable housing. And I would suggest that at that point you get some pen and paper just to start writing things down, terminology. And I also ask you to put something in the chat if I'm using acronyms. Housing, as you will find out, is full of alphabet soup. So if at any point I start using acronyms or going too far into housing lingo, do not feel a kind of way. Put it in the chat, and then I will make sure I stop and clarify that. And if I see that we have a need to have somewhat of a vocabulary list of housing terms that you will have or hear during these sessions, we will make sure that we provide that for you. And before we begin, we just have a few ground rules and expectations. As we said before, this is not a webinar. It will be interactive. It's a small enough group where we can talk together and have this more as a discussion. We ask, if you are not talking, to have um, have yourself on mute so that we're not distracted by any background noise. And that would be helpful to us all. Questions are welcomed. Again, we want to interact, and it's a small enough group that if you ask me something, I want to be able to answer you. I want you to get the most out of this as possible. And as you already know, since Tyra said, the sessions will be recorded because we have some folks that will be joining later on, or for your own reference, if you want to go back to and say, what was she saying or what did she say? Um, topics are cumulative, meaning that they're just going to feed off of each other. And then we will have some homework, because what's a housing session without homework after each one? So we'll go through that and what we'll be expecting. Tyra is the actual professor in the group, so she may
Oh my.
she may she may have some hard grading. I'm kind of loose when it comes to that. I just want to make sure you get it done and just kind of use it as a way of thinking as we go through these sessions.
So just so you know, we have assignments because again, these are almost more like workshops than just a webinar. So if you are seriously considering affordable housing projects, then these assignments are meant to get you ready. It's to get you to the next step.
Hmm.
And also these sessions are more like workshops so you can get to the next step. Uh,
Right.
I know all of you have been through a lot of Zooms lately, probably a lot of webinars where you sit in front of a screen for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I've been in some that have been 5 hours long.
No,
After the first 30 minutes, I have no idea what they said. So
not happening
hopefully
today.
this won't be like that.
So
All
we
right.
wanted to begin with all of you, and again, when you are speaking, we would like for you to go off of mute, to tell us your name and what organization you're representing today. If you're not representing an organization and just yourself, that's perfectly fine here. You can just say your name and then add ink at the end. And has your organization begun exploring affordable housing? And then what's the most interesting place you ever visited? So anyone can start.
I'll start.
Thanks, India.
My name is India Walton. I am Executive Director of the Fruit Belt Community Land Trust. We actually are in progress on 2 single families in partnership with Habitat for Humanity. Those are they're probably about 60% complete. They have roofs and doors and windows, so that's exciting. And we're in pre-development with some nonprofit partners on a 50-unit project also in the Fruit Belt neighborhood. And the most interesting place I've ever visited would be Barcelona, Spain.
Wonderful.
I'll kick it over to Desron.
Hi, this is
Yeah.
Bernie. I'll go next. Oh,
Oh. All
go
right.
ahead.
Well, my name is Dayron. I appreciate this whole moment. Thank you very much for hosting this. Thank you for allowing us to be here. My organization is Push Buffalo. If you've ever heard the West Side advocacy group. Has my organization begun exploring affordable housing? I would honestly say, I think so. I think we've done a little bit of that here and there.
Just a little.
So yeah, just a little, just a little. And what's the most interesting place I have ever visited? I'm gonna go sentimental on this one. It is the warmth and comfort of my grandma's home.
Oh, that's so sweet.
That's
That is
sweet.
so
All right.
sweet.
I'm kicking it over to David Sell.
Good morning. How's everybody doing today?
Good morning.
Good morning. So today I am representing myself, so David Inc. I visited a lot of different places, but I think the most interesting place I visited when I was younger, and it was Attica Correctional Facility to visit my dad. So it's very different, especially being a kid. And I'm going to kick this over to Ms. Jamila.
Jamila, I think we hear you, but it is not coming clear.
Let's have Jamila hold for just a second. And why don't we let Bernadette go ahead and introduce herself?
Okay, hi, my name is Bernie Frangione, and I'm the Vice President for Mission here at Catholic Health and Mount St. Mary's Hospital here in Lewiston, Niagara Falls. Mount St. Mary's joined Catholic Health about 5 years ago, and my passion has always been housing, but never could really get any momentum around it because it wasn't a traditional healthcare service, but everyone knows that it's part of health. So just haven't been able to get people to think outside the box to be able to address that. We're part of the majority of community boards and organizations in the area and have a clinic in a poor area of Niagara Falls. So we really align with many of the work that they're doing, which includes housing. And for us, healthcare is such a broad term. I'd really, instead of just talking about it all the time, I'd like to have some tangible information to say to the organization, we can do this, and this is how we can do it. So I'm just tired of talking about it and want people to hear that there's a plan and there is a way to do it. That makes sense. And interesting place, I think everywhere I go is interesting. So I'm just grateful to be able to be in different spaces in my life.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. How about Laura? Can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Laura Kelly. I am a freelance grant writer and program coach. I don't usually have typos in my own speech. I have about 2 decades of experience with housing and community development. I was at an NPC and I know Ms. Simeon very well. Thank you very much. Good to see your face. And I'm currently working with some both for-profit and not-for-profit clients, including one who has some really innovative ideas for affordable housing, entrepreneurship, and community building.
Okay.
What's the most interesting place you've ever visited?
Oh golly, I missed that one. That's a tough one because I'm always interested in things wherever I go. But I think one of the most interesting places I've ever visited would be New Orleans. I just can't get enough of that place.
Thanks, Laura. Jamila introduced herself via the chat, Tyra, and then I think we have Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Trapp, here for Third Estate, and the most interesting place I've been to is, honestly, I still like Niagara Falls. It's just, it always amazes me every time. So you could rack that up with the Grand Canyon and Niagara Falls. It's just things that are that powerful and that natural. It just always amaze me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe, for joining us. Tyra, did you want to go?
Oh.
So that we can all get to know each other.
Okay. All right. So Tyra Johnson Hux. I work with List Western New York. I've been doing a lot of things with real estate development in terms of programming. So teaching people like yourselves more about development, real estate development. Most interesting place that I've been to, I would probably say a long time ago when I was in college. It feels like forever ago. I spent a summer in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Wow.
And I worked at a bar and met a lot of interesting people. So it was quite the memorable thing. And Stephanie, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm Stephanie Simeon, and I'm with Heart of the City Neighborhoods and affordable, and similar to Dayron, I think we do a little bit of affordable housing as well. So we're definitely constantly thinking about it. The most interesting place I've ever visited was I went to Charleston. And I was there for this Bali conference, which is Business Alliances of Local Livable Economies. And I stayed there. And the thing that made Charlotte interesting is because I didn't know that my grandfather was born there. And I went to a place which was a farmer's market And I kind of felt like I knew that place, like I had been there before. And as I'm there getting stuff from the farmer's market, this tourist goes by and says, and here where this lady was eating watermelon, which I will never eat watermelon in public again because of this. He was like, and here's this is where we sold slaves. I was like, so I was like, oh my God. I have a feeling here. I'm eating watermelon as a Black woman, deeply melanated. I'm so never doing that again. But I love the space. I would love to go back. It also was Old Home Week for Buffalo, so like Lenovo's hosted, and it was a whole thing. But I really loved it. If I would ever retire, I'd probably retire there, not near the plantation though. So now that we've had a great chance to get to know each other, and we'll have more chances like this each session, let's just start out with the basics. Why affordable housing? And you would think, well, sort of, why not? But there are so many caveats to affordable housing, and there's so many ways to look at doing it. And um, if you are considering it or already in the field and thinking about ways to bring affordable housing to where you are or your neck of the woods, or in Bernadette's situation, to Catholic Health, to kind of look at how housing is a social determinant of health. These are things that you kind of need to think about. Um, and why did we put affordable housing in front of it? And what does that make you think of? Um, we will get on in a few slides here. We will get into um, the public approval process that is going to be required if you decide to go the affordable housing route. And one of the things that I've experienced in going through the Common Council or going through the political realm for public approvals is that when you say the word affordable housing, it often conjures up these thoughts and it makes people think of something. And often it's something negative. And I have had, and Laura Kelly knows this, when we used to travel together for a New York State housing advocacy group that we were a part of, that I'm still a part of, where people would say things like, if you will build affordable housing, you should require your tenants to do quarterly urine checks. If you do build affordable housing, we will approve it if you do following veiled form of ism, all kind of isms. And so I toss this question out to you all. Um, what is it that you think of when you think of affordable housing? Um, because all sorts of people will have different things that they would think of, and why would you, and what vision do you have when you think of affordable housing? We'll just take one or two folks to respond to that so that we can be good on time. Anyone?
When I think of affordable housing, I think of housing that does not exceed more than 30% of an individual or family's household income.
Mm-hmm. And what does it look like?
It's safe, it's clean, it's healthy. There's no peeling paint. There's no asbestos risk. There is space outside to play. There's adequate lighting. There are support systems to help people advance to the next stage of their life, whether that be pursuing education, extracurriculars for their children, or finding more gainful employment for themselves, and all of those sort of wraparounds that sort of help people become healthy and whole individuals.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else want to add to that?
I would. This is Laura Kelly. When I think of affordable housing, the ideal for me is a mixed income community, not a segregated or straight level community. Because if we have many different levels of achievement and expectation, I think we do make a stronger community and more supportive overall. I remember having this crazed conversation about affordable housing in Montauk, Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that their $600,000 little capes were affordable housing. And I said, well, where do your employees come from? Oh, the other end of the island. They have to take a bus. They don't mind. I'm like, all right, how about you all try it?
Mm-hmm.
This is not affordable housing. Just
Mm-hmm.
because it's sub 1 million and you can afford the 2 million, that's no. Where's your child going to live when they graduate from high school?
Mm-hmm.
This is not, this is everybody. When I
Mm-hmm.
worked in a small community that I worked in, they didn't want to have affordable housing in the neighborhood because that meant poor people would live there. I'm like, or rentals. Rentals were bad. I'm like, okay, where is your son and daughter-in-law going to make their first home?
Mm-hmm.
How's that going to work? So
Yeah.
it needs to be inclusive.
Yeah. And I always thought that we should really look at that wording for affordable housing, because the opposite is unaffordable housing. And who's going to go and petition for that? Like, who wants unaffordable housing? No one in their right mind. But for purposes of definition and for this session, because it's the beginning, affordable housing means that you are not, or an individual is not contributing more than 30% of their income towards a house payment. And then a house payment is equals to your rent plus your utilities. So if you say, if I'm making, I'm just gonna look over here because I have my cheat sheet here. If your average income is annual income is $27,200 for one person, um, HUD says that you're able to afford a one bedroom apartment at $703. I don't agree with that. Because when we do your income qualifications, and as you would as an affordable housing organization, we have to go over the gross. So it's 30% of your gross income, not your net. So a lot of us who are on this call who are single, I'm a single mom, um, or you're just a single person like you, David Inc. You have to say, well, they kill me with taxes. Well, the thing is that I can't count that. I count your gross income. So if you're making 30,000, even though you're bringing home 20,000, I go off of your gross. So what's affordable to you with your net is not going to be technically affordable to someone else. And in many cases, you will be put in a position where you have to disqualify someone because their income is too low for to afford housing, your housing, or their income is too high, so they need unaffordable housing, which makes absolutely no sense. So I just wanted to kind of just go off of that, and for you to think about when you think of affordable housing. The thing is that with affordable housing, like Laura said, we're thinking of people who are very low income and who are poor, but it doesn't matter what your income status is. Affordability is based upon that 30% number. And so, in my view, we should be looking at affordable housing for all people at all income levels, because what one person requires is we all require the same thing. Like India said, safe, clean, a decent place to live, a decent place to raise your kids. Um, and that shouldn't be based off of your 30% of your income. That should just be a basic human need in my book. So, as we go through the series, one of the things we want you to be thinking about is, would your board of directors, for those of you who are representing nonprofits, David Inc. This does not apply to you, but would your board of directors assume additional responsibility if they want to get into affordable housing? How much risk are they willing to take? Um, if you're doing affordable housing, you're going to have to go after, we'll talk about the fiscal responsibilities on your end later on as we go through the series, but there's some things that you really need to think about. Do you have the money for acquisition costs? Are you willing to take on the insurance for a vacant lot or vacant home that was a den of iniquity? So a place where right now it's a drug house or it's a trap house. Are you willing to take on those risks? if you're a nonprofit. I think, Bernadette, that's something that, you have the Catholic Charities Board, they're going to have to think about that. And for those of you who are individuals who are looking to get into affordable housing development, they will not, if you go after traditional financing, you would have to have something called a community development corporation in order to receive development subsidies to build your housing. So, for those of you who are representing individuals, you're going to have to look at creating a board of directors for a nonprofit in order to receive government funding for your development. Are you ready for increased community scrutiny? So you think you're the good guy because you're doing affordable housing? You're not the good guy, because of these things that people conjure up in their head when you think of affordable housing. I've had people ask for my resignation when I have proposed projects into the community. I've had people say that I had people physically put their house up for sale. They don't want to live next to affordable housing. People who express fears of their children being killed because people are benefiting from affordable housing, drive large cars like Hummers, and they just barrel down the driveway, killing innocent kids. I've had it all, and many of you who are representing organizations and yourself are thinking, well, no, the community would never scrutinize me. They would never call me the bad guy. I'm the superhero. Take your cape off, because they will scrutinize you. The biggest complaint you're going to get is who's going to be doing your property management if you're doing rental. Because most of the concerns that people have is these Section 8 renters and irresponsible landlords, out of town investors who've made a bad name for all of us. And even though that may not be you, that's going to be you when you're going before the Common Council of your area for community approvals. Are you ready for more fiscal liability? Here's a term that you may hear, something called speculative housing or spec housing. That means that you're building housing without a buyer in mind or renter in mind, or you're buying in an area that the market could not bear. So maybe you're going to be putting a $200,000 investment in a single home that only can sell for $55,000. That's speculative because you need a significant development subsidy to remain in that home to make it affordable for that proposed homeowner. Are you willing to take on risk? My organization, about 10 years ago, had to take a loan from LISC because we got government subsidy from Homes and Community Renewal. And we ran into having to do, they changed their rules mid-design, and we had to do full lead remediation and not abatement. And we were going to deal with the lead on the housing by just putting hardy board siding over the asbestos siding and repaint over the lead paint. They did not agree with that. We had to do the full lead remediation, meaning completely remove all the lead. And that was an additional $35,000 cost. And the state who was funding us decided not to pay that. And so we had two properties that we were doing at the same time, and that put us at $70,000 in the hole because they decided that even though we had this grant from them, that they just weren't going to pay that. That was a developer error, and we had to eat that cost. So not only did we not get a developer fee from that, we also had to take out another loan, putting us at more fiscal risk to make sure that we had this home that was lead-free, followed the guidelines, and was prepared for a first-time home buyer. There is a lot of times that you're going to have to take on risk, and the reward to the community is high, and the return on investment to the community is high, but your bottom line will take a hit, and you need to be prepared for that. And then the last question we have before we open it up to the group is, do you have the additional staff to take on affordable housing development? Do you have someone that's going to do your outreach? Who's going to do your marketing? Who is actually has the experience to do development, to take a project from soup to nuts? Are you equipped for that? That's a full-time job. Are you going to hire a bunch of part-time folks or consultants? Do you have the financial capacity to do that? And if a lot of you are shaking your head saying, I didn't know about that, and I'm not too sure, that's something that you definitely want to think about. Before we move on, I know that I said a lot. Any questions, any comments, thoughts, or anything you want clarified?
I don't see any questions yet, Stephanie, but I'm wondering.
Okay.
So you said some things that may be alarming to our participants here today. So what's the good things that happen? Why don't we re-emphasize those? We give people safe, healthy homes.
Right. So as I said, the return on investment for the community that you are looking at to build affordable housing is high. One story I can tell you that's what we're living right now is that the apartments that we had on Hudson Street, we kept the rents extremely low. And I think it was $515 for a 2-bedroom. And this one immigrant family from Morocco I was able to help them escape domestic violence. They were in a shelter. The mom and the daughter were in the shelter. The abuser was the dad. And we were able to get them out of that situation. It was through a faith-based group that got them from where they were to Buffalo, and we were able to get them a 2-bedroom apartment. Within a year, she was able to save up to buy her first home, and she bought a home from one of the city programs. It's called the Homegrown Program, and again, we're one of those agencies that can walk her through that process. And talk about being able to get be upwardly mobile. I think India mentioned that, and being able to get jobs and be able to employ. We were at the point where we were going to have to say, we're going to have to charge you market rate rent, because once she got into stable housing, she was able to finish up a trade that she was in. Then she got an accounting job at the city of Buffalo that put her way over income for our program. And so we didn't want to evict her, but we were going to have to charge her market rate rent. And instead of that, I was like, well, instead of that, why don't you start saving up for a home? And that's exactly what she did. So when you remove that barrier of having a decent place to live and a good roof over your head, you open up people's opportunities. One of the other opportunities that I've seen is that when you see that kid inviting people over to their house, they are so proud of that apartment. They're like, come over, they're inviting their friends over because they are so proud to be able to say, look at my room. And you come in and it's rodent free and it's clean and you have these things. Or like I saw the kids, they're saying, because I put central air in all of my affordable housing units, and the kids saying, well, if you want to cool out, you come to my crib because it's nice and cool in here. And it was just like, and I remember that I am a product of New York housing, like NYCHA, in New York City, where I was from in Brooklyn. And I remember those moments of being, my parents did the best they could, but being embarrassed. Like this was, it was like a poorly run building, and it was full of rodents, and you couldn't keep food out, and you had all these things. And then we were able to own our apartment in the brownstone. It was different. My whole attitude changed. All of my sisters went on to higher education because those are things that my parents didn't have to worry about. And I know that I know I'm not speaking to the choir, but when you know that you have a decent place, you don't have that stressor in your life. So think of it, even though there are some challenges, and there's challenges to anything, but anything worth doing will have its challenges, but it is extremely worth it. So I would say hang in there. Okay, so some of the things that will help us get ready and help you all get ready is to think about your organizational readiness. And the best way to explain that is the previous slide that we already had, where you ask yourself these questions. Do we have the staff and capacity to take on a project? Can we take a hit if we don't get fully funded? Are we ready to be the bad guys and be in the paper dealing with some of those things? And are we really ready to maybe switch focus? What if you're not an affordable housing organization? What if all you do is, what if you are a gardening organization or you're an education place or a health place and you say, well, we've never done this before? Are we ready to take on this new arm or this new type of development? Um, and if the answer is no, that doesn't mean it's going to be no forever. These are just things that you need to think about. Have you ever gone through a project planning to know, well, what's the area of focus? What areas should we target? Should we target the areas surrounding our business? Should we target the area where our client base is coming from and they are showing signs of housing insecurity? How do we do that? And is there funding to even explore an opportunity to get into affordable housing? Who do we need to have on the board? Who do we need to have around the table to have these conversations? Um, and then when you want to look into reporting systems, I feel like that should be like highlighted in gold and covered in glitter because to make a lot of the affordable housing projects happen, you may be in a position where you have to layer significant resources. So sometimes to do single family homes, if you're looking to go that route, you're going to have to layer a lot of resources, especially if your target area is an area that has been socially, economically depressed for over 10, 20 years. That means that when you do your market appraisals, which is going to be required, the market is not going to be able to bear the cost of what you're trying to do. So that means the person that's going to buy that home is not going to be able to pay for the same amount you put in to construct it. So how are you going to be able to maintain the reporting systems for that funding source? A lot of times, a lot of groups do not budget for the post construction reporting. So your project is done, maybe it's multi-family housing, which is rental housing, or single family homes. You've done your ribbon cutting, and now we're all kumbaya. Well, within 6 months, you have some financial accountability to the people that helped you construct the project. If you only hired staff, going back to that question of do I have the staffing capacity? If you only hired staff for a specific project, who's going to help you with the affordability period? Do know that if you receive any federal funding, even if you're a subgrantee of a state agency or city organization, the average year of affordability is 15 years, meaning that you have to maintain the affordability period for that unit, whether it's a single family home or an apartment, for 15 years. So, am I going to have staff that's going to be responsible for making sure that that tenant still income qualifies to be in that unit? Or is that person up to date on their taxes and their mortgage if they're in a single family home? Every year, for every home that we have built, I think we've done 15 since I've been on staff, which started in 2007. Every year I have to send a letter out to the homeowner and I have to check their taxes online to make sure they're up to date on their taxes and they're doing what they're supposed to do as a homeowner. If at that point they're not responding to me or I get return to sender, that means they're no longer living there. That means I haven't done my due diligence when it comes to reporting system. And what that will be, it means is that whoever funded the construction can now recapture, meaning go back to you and take that funding back that you used to build that home or build that apartment. We will talk a little bit more about that. Reporting systems is something that I have a lot of experience with. But this is just introductory and just an overview. So I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. Um,
Stephanie,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say to our participants that originally when I drafted an outline for this program, there was like 17 modules that I thought would be appropriate to teach all of you. And we realized that for kind of a 101 level course or 102 level course, that may be a little bit overwhelming, but I'm glad Stephanie is giving you the highlights of some of the things that you can expect. I think one of our goals here is just to make sure that you realistically go into these projects knowing that there's going to be a long road ahead. You have to start you need to think that, okay, we're looking 15 years ahead at the very minimum in order to complete one of these projects. And so I just want to reiterate, it's not, we're not bringing these issues up to scare anybody, but just to inform and to have you beginning to think of that mindset that, there's a long road ahead. It's doable, but you have to be organized. Your organization has to be ready. You have to be organized. You have to have a way to talk to one another, report, and you have to think about how you're complying with all these funding sources that you need to get in order to make this project possible. So with that said, we're going to go on about some specific things that your organization needs to do to get ready.
Yeah. So, is there any questions or any comments that anyone needs? You can just feel free to put those in the chat, and Tyra and I are working to make sure that we're answering them as they come across. Here, I thought this was really important, and I really love this slide about the capacity to learn. And also, I think it should be another bullet of like a capacity to make mistakes. No one knows all the answers. Housing is so broad. It's a basic need that you would think that we wouldn't have to talk about housing or let alone affordable housing, but there's a lot to be learned here. And for all of us, I think there was someone that said they might be from like Florida or something. For all of us that are in New York State, the laws are constantly changing. And so you need to have a capacity or give yourself some room when you're thinking of taking on affordable housing projects to learn what the rules are, who's in charge of enforcing those rules. What happens if I make a mistake because I didn't read the fine print on page 98? And get yourself ready for long reading. Housing applications are usually 100 pages. The rules on how to run a housing project, again, I think it's like 98 pages, but they try to detail as much as they can, but leave yourself room to learn about what you're getting yourself into. Leave your board an opportunity to say, we don't know the answers, but we do know we have a need. We know that these people, our clients, need something, and we think that we're equipped to get it to them. How we do it, we can work on those details. But you really want to think about, are we ready for that? Then you want to really say, okay, well, now that we've figured out that we really do want to go in this direction, is your organization interested in being the catalyst for affordable housing project? So does it have to be through you? That's one of the questions that I think Bernadette is asking herself in her organization. Is this something that we, Catholic Health Organization, should we be taking on? Or is this something that we should partner with? Is there a local agency that we should partner with and let them know what we see as a need from our patients coming in and something that they can help with? For groups like PUSH and Fruitbelt Land Trust, PUSH who's already been in the experience, and Fruitbelt Land Trust that is moving further along in your journey in affordable housing. It's like, well, how can I take my current project and maybe 10x it? So what can I do to make it even more impactful? And sometimes you also need to leave room, back to the willingness to learn. You need to leave some room to be nimble, because sometimes things change, and maybe you thought rental housing was the way to go to provide density, and really there was so much community pushback that maybe the way that you need to go, or the only way that will be favorable to the community, is single families and doubles. So you need to figure out your way to be nimble, and be able to say, well, if we're going to be this catalyst for change, and we're going to be respectful of the community, we need to change focus and allow yourself some room for that. And again, I want to encourage you to always ask questions in the chat if you have them. And so here we go. This is the perfect image. Are you willing to take the risk? Again, I think that Tyra's trying to make sure I nail it home that this is not scared straight for the developer, but more of learning from experience, learning from things, because Tyra also came from a for-profit entity and previous experience, and I'm coming from a nonprofit world. Either way, there's risk. If you're doing this as a for-profit organization, if you're doing this as a not-for-profit organization, there are going to be risks because what you're hoping to do is all speculative. Remember, you are willing to do the things that nobody else is willing to do. If it was something that was like a fun thing to do and a huge moneymaker, you would see the headlines in the paper always saying 100 units of affordable housing. Whoa! Since you haven't seen that, we all know that this is the stuff that nobody wants to do. In many cases, we're taking on the risk because we take care of the low-hanging fruit, the seniors, bedroom communities, folks, housing where maybe people are making only 30% area median income. Where are they going to go? Folks that are transitioning from shelters, where are they going to go? So these are risks, and when you get into your homework over the next week or two, you really want to think of yourself as to how much risk am I willing to take, because it depends on what your target audience is going to be. So that's something that you do want to think about. So as we move on, a clear decision-making process within the organization. I think this is a two-part thing. One, meaning who is the decision maker? In many cases, if you're the nonprofit, you're going to say, well, of course, it's my board of directors. Wrong answer. Because at the end of the day, you as executive director, the program officer, or whatever role that you play in your organization, it's going to be you're going to have to sort of lead, sort of bottom up leadership. So your board of directors you may see them once a month or every other month. They only know what you tell them. Hopefully you're being as transparent as possible, but they don't know the day-to-day persons that are coming to the office or the calls that you're receiving of the people who just got evicted for someone being tested positive for COVID, and then their landlord says, no, you got to go. Where is that person going to go? And if you're going to be that catalyst for change, to be that housing developer, you're going to need to make sure you let the powers that be say, hey, we're noticing huge volume in this. Can we start looking to go in this direction? So you need to make sure who's making the decisions, and are they open to discussion from folks that are maybe not the top management, but other folks who are on the ground doing organizing, who are nurses, who are just in the field, who feel like, well, I'm seeing this thing, but I don't really know who to take it to. And that's also going to be really important when it comes down to when you have to do public approvals, because those are the people who are going to get hit with the letters, the tweets, the whatever, on saying, how could you do this to our neighborhood? And we need to know who has the decision-making power. I want to urge you, before we move on, please do not let your funder be the person making the decisions when it comes to you doing affordable housing. If your funder dictates your ability to meet the needs of the community, then you really need to rethink if you yourself are the catalyst for change, or if you are willing to do mission drift to take on a project you've never done just because they are waving some dollars at you. Really think about it. Affordable housing is not a joke. And it's not always just a moneymaker. This is about a return on investment for community. So now we go into a little change up there. I like it dancing. And if at any point people need to get up and move, that could have been a cue from Tyra that you need to move your body because
It
it
was
has been
completely
50
my
minutes.
fault. Did I tell you last night I was on a session and I had the slides and my son came in and changed the slides? He's a
Fantastic.
toddler, but this time it was all me. Sorry.
Fantastic. So let's ask ourselves some questions, and we're going to leave this open where we're going to go through and maybe ask some of you guys to help answer these questions. Do the skills of your current staff, think about your current staff, match the skills needed to become an affordable housing developer? I'll give you some time to think about that. So, does anyone have a question first of what is an affordable housing developer before they answer that question? I don't know if this is a thing where you can raise your hand. I don't know how.
You know, Stephanie, before we give them a chance to answer, I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about the different segments of affordable housing development, whether you're an owner, whether you are, you know, truly the developer, or whether you're the manager of the project.
Right.
Could you go into that a little
So
bit?
that's really important because when you go after funding, they're going to ask you what's your role. So there's multiple roles you can play. Um, and I can also share with you if questions are asked as to what roles we often play. Um, so first, the role is who's the applicant. Sometimes the applicant is the person that's just applying for the funding. They're just an organization. So I'm going to go back to um, Bernadette for an example. Bernadette Catholic Health is the applicant because they want to go after some housing development funds. The owner is going to be called a to be named entity, which means once the project is built, the owner will be 123 Main Street Housing Development Fund Company because you're going to have a to be named entity to own it. Then the developer is the person that is going to play the role of the project manager. This is the person that's going to make sure the funding is secured, all the resources needed to develop the project has been secured, and they're going to see the project from soup to nuts. So from the beginning through the public approvals, through the construction, and then as construction is complete. They're also going to be the person that's probably going to be responsible for the compliance that we talked about earlier. There is another role as well, which is the consultant role or the community. Sometimes they call them some roles I've had is like the community engagement consultant, the community outreach consultant. So some of you can play a role. So in this case, Bernadette's group is the applicant. They've decided that we don't want to be the catalyst for affordable housing, but we do want to see something done. They then decide to hire Push Buffalo as the developer. And the to be named entity will be 34 units on 123 Main Street. That will be the owner. That means the project itself can take care of itself. So the building will have its own bank account, its own board of directors, its own overseeing, all that's needed. And then they decided they're going to go and partner with Fruit Belt Land Trust, Heart of City, or Laura Kelly to be the consultant to make sure that they are dotting their I's and crossing their T's. So, what role I have played all of those roles as Heart of the City. And I've also played the role as property manager when the multifamily housing construction has been built, which is mean I was in charge of rent up, income qualifying people, and taking care of the tenants for whatever the term of my contract is. Does that make sense or does it sound like gobbledygook? And that is a scientific term.
You know, I would just add that our next session is dedicated to providing a summary of the full development process as well as all the team members. So Stephanie listed off several parts of the team, and then there's other, you know, players that will come in. So our next session is really breaking that down as to all the people that need to participate and who's qualified to play those roles. Davida Alexander, who is an attorney here locally, will be joining us for our next session.
Yes, and just to make sure we're all clear, the housing developer is not the builder. The housing developer or your consultant that you hires or helps with the bidding process for your contractor. We are not ourselves, despite the pink hard hat you see in the back, are not putting on our hard hats and nailing in things. We do a bidding process, and that's our job as the housing developer. So in this case, Catholic Health says we want to see housing. We hire Push Buffalo as a developer. Push Buffalo then decides to do an open bidding process with the scope of work from whoever architect that they decide to work with to then do the bidding, do the building, the electrical, the plumbing, and everything that's needed. But they are overseeing the project as it is under construction. Just I wanted to make sure I made that clear. Which also goes to the next thing. Are you ready to hire a contractor or staff to fill that need if you don't feel that you would play any of the roles that I just mentioned? Does your organization meet unmet housing needs in the community? That's a thing that you really want to be able to answer, because when it's time for whoever is doing the development or your grant writing, they need to be able to answer that. That needs to be part of the value statement right up front, because everybody says that they are building housing, but what makes you unique? Maybe it's your target population. When I first started out, it was immigrant groups, and then I decided it was women escaping domestic violence. And then there's different times that I change things as I see the need fits. And you need to go back to that thing of like, how nimble are we to be able to take the pulse of the community and be able to address those needs? And are we the agency to do that? Or do we need to partner with a domestic violence organization or a homeless transition organization? Last question, is there a better solution? Maybe it's not bricks and mortar. Maybe it's not bricks and mortar. Maybe the real issue that you're seeing is people need consistent jobs. Maybe it's job readiness. Maybe it's the fact that we have low achieving schools. Maybe it's the educational thing. Maybe it's people having access. Maybe it's not housing. Maybe it's safety. People just don't feel safe in their neighborhoods. So could we look at different ways to make people feel more safe? Maybe we need to do a crime initiative. We don't know. But sometimes the answer is not always housing development. And whatever that answer is, the good thing would be to say, well, we realize that housing wasn't the answer. This could be a solution, and these are the groups that we're going to partner with, or this is the group ourselves that we're going to take on to do that. So I will stop there. Tyra, yep, I will leave it over to you.
Had a comment, and she asked, at some point, will we talk about innovative ideas to satisfy community engagement requirements during COVID? So our third session is dedicated to community engagement and creating a development strategy. We will be talking about community engagement in general, but talking more specifically about COVID, I think it's definitely something that needs to be included in that conversation.
Absolutely.
Real estate in general has changed. Everything has changed. And so there's going to be a shift in the way there has already been a shift in the way things are done. So thank you for asking that question. We won't necessarily talk about it much today, but that is scheduled for our third session.
Yep. If there are any questions or comments that folks wanted to make in regard to this, what's on the screen now, before we go into next steps and homework.
So nobody wants to say whether they're ready.
I will
After
find
hearing you
out.
talk, they probably say, everybody would say no. There's no way. How could anybody possibly be ready for this?
The thing is,
I didn't know it was an actual question we were supposed to answer.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So the first one, which is, do you feel you have staff that match the needs to become an affordable housing developer?
No.
Thank you for your comment today.
But you know what? We do have a staff and board that are very committed and willing to learn. So that's what we have.
Hey, that's half the battle. That's absolutely half the battle.
I think if you're from my perspective, I would have to kind of like take off the push hat, because I guess in the capacity of Push Buffalo, you know, we've been at this for a while, so we have the capacity. But if you're taking it to like a more local level, you know, saying, can I mobilize individuals inside of our community, maybe like a very, very, very strong block club who sees blight, who sees areas where we can create infill projects for affordable housing. Does that typical structure / organization hold the capacity? I think it's really hard to say yes to that. You know, and
Ron, your connection is cutting up. Oh. We'll stay tuned. Oh, I see something back.
Why don't we give Dayron a second to maybe rejoin us in a little bit? Does anybody else want to comment? Oh, okay, he's back. Keep on going. We lost you for a second.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I kept turning my video off because my connection kept going in and out. I'll do that again. But, yeah, what was the last thing that we heard?
You talked about in a community group setting, maybe a strong block club, that they may not be ready, and then you started to be choppy.
Oh, yeah. Well, the very last thing that I said was, you know, in an organization like that, you're either dealing with individuals who already have full-time jobs and responsibilities, or they're typically retired and older. So heavily relying on that type of participation levels between those individuals, or just having a very, very robust consultant bill to, you know, do this project are the two avenues. But a lot of people don't have the capital to just have a very high consultant bill. So it kind of like plays into the role of, do you have the capacity to find enough individuals who have the time to dedicate to learning these different skills to become to hold the different realms of affordable housing development.
Stephanie, can we talk a little bit about the pros and cons of having volunteers work on this effort?
Now you told me I'm the scared straight person. Which one? Which one?
That's, I'm going to change the title of this session to scared straight with Stephanie.
I've always wanted to do that show, by the way. So
because I think a lot of, especially, you know, faith-based organizations, they may be thinking, you know, this is something that our congregation wants, for example, and so we are going to enlist the help of our congregants to push this forward. And so is that a realistic thing to do? Or if we're in the case of what Dayron said, if you have a block club and you have some people that are retired and they enjoy doing work like this, is that, you know, what are some of the pros? What are some of the cons?
I'll start with the pros first. Some of the pros is that I think just as a community, we often disregard our elders when they're not working anymore. And a lot of times in these block club groups or in our volunteer base, the ones that want to give back the most are the folks that are retired and fill in the blank professional. And if you have retired lawyers, you're still a lawyer, an accountant, someone that maybe used to write grants, someone that was an artist. They have all these talents and all of them can be utilized. You just need a really strong coordinator that is a paid staff position that group kind of can use as a liaison. So if you have someone that you see maybe is your community outreach person that's on staff, you want to make sure that that person has the skills and the resources to work with this group, and make sure that their viewpoints are being answered, and how to really utilize the volunteers, because everyone has something that they can contribute, and you don't want to turn them away. You just want to make sure that you know how to use that energy that they have, and they're willing to give it for free, so that it can benefit this project or a goal that they would like to accomplish. So, case in point, when we did our website, we had someone that wanted to volunteer, and they wanted to be like, a lot of people think because we do housing that it's more like a habitat style, where you can come in and you can help, install the floors or do some demo or do this and that. And we hire all of those out, just because we have really tight time constraints on our projects. So we said to this person, we don't really need that right now, but what are some other things that you're interested in? And they're like, oh, well, I used to be a web developer. I'm like, we don't have a website. Can we use you to do this, to promote this project and all the stuff? Or people who do photography. Also, those people who want to volunteer, and you say you're a photographer, you always need pictures. You always need certain things. So everyone can be utilized. I would say the only con I would see is someone that used to be a contractor, because now you have too many chefs in the kitchen. And if you have hired a contractor, and this person is a volunteer that used to do construction or owned his own construction company that is no longer around, you're going to have some conflict there. Again, having that strong project manager, strong construction compliance person is key, because you're going to be able to be a liaison to make sure that you don't dismiss the volunteer's efforts or upset your contractor and who walks off site, because either way the community loses on that in those regards. So you just want to make sure you have a place to put those people, or how to redirect that energy.
So what's the case against using volunteers?
I don't see any case against them. I think you just have to be strong enough to know how to utilize folks. Now, if you have a team of gardeners coming in saying we're A Street Garden Club. Hi, thank you, welcome to the meeting. What would you like to do? We want to see this kind of building, or we want to build a greenhouse, and we want you guys to do that, and we're willing to volunteer the time to do that. Just like, oh, okay, well, thank you. You just have to figure out a way to say, these are our current projects right now, and this is where you would be needed. But I wouldn't say turn anyone away. Just maybe say, we need you, but just not right now. Or maybe put them as a volunteer on your board of directors, as opposed to a volunteer on a new initiative that you're starting. But you might see some other cons that I didn't point out.
I don't necessarily see a lot of cons, but I think Dayron wanted to add something. Go ahead.
Oh, I just had a quick question, especially in the conversation of volunteers. A lot of people that I talk to inside these spaces who aren't very familiar with the process are always curious as to ask, what are the top maybe 3 or 4 essential pieces or staff members that you need to accomplish this? Or what roles do individuals have to be in so that you know for a fact that you can accomplish something like this?
Strong project manager, someone that's on staff as your project manager, or I think it's the project manager, the construction monitor, someone that knows somewhat of the construction, that can walk people through. Because a lot of times people say, well, why did you put that? Or why are you using this roof material? Some folks just have lots of questions, and just giving people a way to ask those questions, validate what they're asking, and respond in a way that answers what they're looking for. So you want to have someone that knows construction and can be able to translate it in layman's terms for just any old body. Strong project manager, meaning that they know how to keep everybody on track. They know the various communication styles that are needed. And then the other person, I would say, a really good development person, So that could be your fund development person. That's the person that's in charge of making sure you have all your resources to do your project. And those are the people that can sell ice to an Eskimo, and know how to shake the trees and know how to do all that stuff to get the money you need to meet your construction designs that you're proposing.
Stephanie, I would probably add an accounting person or
Oh
somebody
yeah.
that really knows the numbers, because there's so much when it goes into creating your massive spreadsheets that you'll need.
Mhm.
We'll go into the basics of that as our last class.
Yeah.
That you need somebody that really knows those formulas, where the
Yeah.
numbers are coming
Yeah.
from, when the separate different funding sources come into play, how long they'll take to get, and
Mhm.
how they're distributed. And so
Absolutely.
somebody that's strong with those numbers is a must for these sort of projects.
And also, I don't know if any of you have ever gone through those DISC, DISC, like CAT analysis, but it's also good to have those kind of people, or Myers-Briggs, the ones that are high C, like conscientious, or the ones that are more into numbers or details. Um, those are the people that you want to make sure they are in charge of the project compliance, the funding compliance, and maybe involved with a little bit of the project management, because those are the people, as they say, the devil is in the details. They are going to make sure that that rounded number on that Excel sheet bottoms out. They are going to see all that stuff. I can't. But those people can do that, and they're willing to stay hours over numbers and make sure everything lined up. God bless them. But those are the people, if you know your team, or if you're developing your team, considering this series, you might want to think about having someone do the disc analysis and just kind of understand the capacity of the folks that you are bringing on, and see where's the best way to have a good fit for them. So with it be 12, with it being 12:13, I think we can go into next steps. Tyra, what do you think?
Yeah, so I have on the screen shared our homework assignment. And so we said at the beginning of this that this is interactive, and we meant interactive even when we're not together, meaning that we expect you to think about some things, do some things, check on some things, and really we're probably going to be asking you to report back to us.
Yes.
We are probably send you some emails in between the sessions, just kind of getting a sense of where you are with the project.
Mm-hmm.
And so forth. So these questions were designed specifically for trying to determine if you have your organizational readiness. So that was the main theme of today: is your organization ready?
Mm-hmm.
And so the first question we have in here, going back to why you need a strong math person. Does your organization follow standard accounting practices? Do you have somebody that puts your receipts in a box, like a shoebox, and then you get to it at the end of the year? Or do you have somebody that is entering information on a regular basis? They may know how to use QuickBooks or some other sort of financial software. And has your organization had an audit? And Stephanie, maybe you can explain why that second question is really important.
The benefit of having the audit, and the reason why we're asking these financial questions is because many of you will be required to be in a system called the Grants Gateway, or SAM.gov. We will talk about that much later on. And you will have to upload these documents in order for you to qualify to receive contracts from those government sources. So they want to know, if you are a nonprofit, how do you handle money? And your financial audit done by a third-party CPA firm is going to answer that question, so that you don't have to.
So Stephanie, what if you're a new organization and you don't really have a track record? Let's say you're just starting out and you're like, I want to start with one home, and then I just started my nonprofit.
Right.
You don't necessarily have that financial background.
And those are the groups that I typically work with, most of the faith-based groups, because their CDC doesn't have a financial audit. The church does. So what you need to do is partner yourself up with a fiscally strong organization that will be your mama for the first year until you have received funding for your first housing project and have done something called a cost certification, which showed how you utilize the grant award to build your project. So plenty of times, and it's not just a pass through. I just want to make sure that's clear. Not someone that they can just pass through the funding, but someone that is fiscally strong enough where they have 3 years past financials that are clean, that will allow you to get entree into other financial resources because you're just starting out. And then you can work out an agreement where you have a co-develop, you share the developer fee, so that it's not that they don't take all your resources. So you can say we can do a 60-40 on my first project, and then the next project I should be able to do all on my own. And that happens a lot. Like some groups might use a group like Belmont Housing Resources. They're fiscally responsible, they have past year's audit, and they're known for doing large scale housing projects. An organization like me might partner with them if I was doing more than 12 units, because that's our limit. But if I wanted to do 40 or 50 affordable housing units, I would partner with Belmont because they can show how they were good stewards of past resources for projects of that size. I hope that helps.
No, that helps. It helped me. So the first two questions on here have to do with, your financial stability. The next one has to do with administrative staff and support. And I think we don't want to beat a dead horse. We talked about why that's so important, but you need to ask yourself, do you have the people on staff that can handle this, those roles we talked about? The fourth question, do you have documented evidence of program success? And in this question, I'm not saying documented evidence necessarily of you doing housing success, but Stephanie, could you go a little bit more
Yeah.
into this?
So most likely you would need to show evidence of community development or running a community-based program. So you want to be able to show we did like a fashion what they call, what a lot of churches do is they do those clothing swaps, so that if you don't have money to buy clothing, you can go to the church and they will donate clothing for you. They saw a need of people needing clothing. They provided a community-based program. Clearly, it was run. It might have received council member item money. So you can show this is what we had, a $5,000 gift from the Common Council. We ran our clothing swap program, or we run a soup kitchen. We do COVID testing. We do books for kids, backpack to backpack programs, anything that is a community-based program that has a staff that has run it. And you can say, we service 100 people a month, a week. In a year, we 1,700 people cross our doors to do something that you can say, look, we can do this. It may not be at the scale of a housing development, but we can work with people. We can work with small donations or gifts. We can meet the needs of people. You need to be able to, you need to be able to demonstrate that and attach like programs or flyers that you have for those programs. That's really going to be needed.
Can you just bear with me? So why is that needed? So you're saying when you go to the organizations that provide funding, they want to know that you can at least implement a program and stick with it? And
yeah, well, not only that, Tyra, many of the folks that are on this call are going to have to create that thing that I talked about, which is the to be named entity or a community development corporation, in order to get government resources for their housing project. Because right now, let's just say I do, I am Food of Western New York. All I do is provide food to people who don't have it. And I run that program successfully. How can I make the case that I can do that and also do housing projects? You can't. So what you need to be able to say is that this program was funded by this government resource. This is how we've been able to do that. Through that program, we've identified families that are coming to us not only in need of food, but in need of housing. In response, we have created this community development corporation or partnered with Push or said housing organization to meet this ongoing need. So you need to be able to make the correlation of how you're coming from serving food to providing housing, or how do you handle getting grant resources, and do you have that in your accounting? Going back to the first question, do you have a financial audit that showed how you handled those member item fundings, the Attorney General funds, however you got the funds? How were you able to handle that for your program? Because the biggest thing is that housing essentially is a program. How can you run a program? So you need to be able to show that you know how to staff it, you can properly fund it, and you understand how those nuances work.
Excellent. And so our last question on here, does your organization look credible? And I almost didn't put this question on here, but I think it's an important one. Some of
It
you
is
may
important.
say, oh, what does that have to do with anything? But,
It has a lot.
the stories that I've heard, Stephanie, I'm going to let you take it from here. Why is this important?
Well, when I've worked with some groups, not going to say any names, one of the biggest things that they're not prepared for is that folks are going to look on your website and everything is email intensive. So the funder may email you this, you got to respond. If your email is, pardon my French, D's Nuts 92, that's completely inappropriate. So, and I've had that. Or look at me, or hot like fire. I don't want to know what's hot like fire. I want to know that you are with Fruit Belt Land Trust or acronym.org or .com. It's completely inappropriate. Or if I go to your website, I don't want to see you and your family photos, you at the beach, you hanging out. No, I want to see that your product that you're telling me that you can do, and results of it, testimonials, or actually have a website in general. We've worked with folks that don't have a website, they just have a Facebook page. A lot of our funders are much older in age. That's not going to work out. You need to have a website and something that people can get basic information. How do we contact you? And I know this is going to sound antiquated, but you need to have a fax number. It's important because you need to have that. You need to have an email, even if it's I do affordable housing at gmail.com. It needs to be something. But you need to look like you're a real business and not you're in your mom's house or in the basement, or anything that will make me uncomfortable with giving you money. And remember, housing projects start at the millions of dollars. You're expecting me or anyone to give you $1 million and your email is something out of control, you've already put yourself out of the game. And I know I don't want to get into respectability politics that are expected of certain groups, but I'm just letting you know, if you want to be in the game, you got to have something.
So, you said you need to have a fax, you need to have an email, you need to have a website. Does that website belong to your newly created organization just to do affordable housing, or is it like if you
It should be for whatever your current thing is. So, so I would say for someone that may be a sole proprietor, like David or Laura, you might have a personal, like a landing page where folks go in there and it talks about what's in your portfolio. So what are things that you're looking to get into? Maybe almost like a vision board of sorts that says, these are the things that I'm interested in. These are the people that I work with. These are the community partners that I know. So that might be for you because you're just a sole proprietor at the moment. But for all the other ones that are organizations, it should be an organization of your current, or a website for your current organization. And then when you can't answer all these questions and you do get into affordable housing, you're going to have a landing page for that project, because that goes back to one of the creative ways to inform the community of what you're doing. So to be mindful of everyone's time, I know we got about 4 minutes left. Tyra, is there anything you want me to cover before we wrap up or open?
I just wanted to say, we talked a little bit. Can you hear me? Are you
Yeah, I
able to
hear you.
hear me? Okay. We talked a little bit about what's coming next. We're really going to go into project planning for the next couple of sessions. So, you know, I've said what we're planning to do in sessions 2, 3, and maybe the last one, but we'll talk more about communications at market study, funding, and then finance in terms of how to put that on paper. And then basically, we set this up. I just wanted to wrap it up with saying why you should continue on this training. So I know that you're all curious, and that's why you're here to begin with, but we want you to be able to understand your options and to evaluate the resources that you already have. We want you to be able to start making moves. So I will be sending an email with these questions on, the questions that we already asked you in the email. If you want to respond back and say, you know, these are the things I have, can you take a look at it? We have a fairly small group right now. We'll be able to say, oh, you know what, this doesn't look good, or this looks okay, or maybe you should try this. So use us as a resource to see if you're on the right track. We also want you to be able to understand your limitations and then conduct due diligence. So that's what's in store for you with the rest of the training. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to stop sharing. And we have 3 minutes. We can open it up to any more questions. If we don't have questions, we'll let you be on your merry way. No questions?
Okay, I think we did a good job. It is a pleasure.
Thank you for this. It was very informative. It was very
Oh,
informative.
thank you. I hope you continue on. We are a wealth of knowledge between Tyra and I, and so are some of your colleagues that are on this series. So we want to make sure we learn from each other. And like I said, I have a tendency to talk really fast, not just as a New Yorker, but when I'm excited about affordable housing. So if there's anything that you need me to repeat, feel free to send an email. I think Tyra has my information, or she'll send that along so that we can stay in the loop. Really look at that homework. Please don't dismiss it. Really ask yourself these tough questions. And if you come back with a lot of no's, don't dismiss yourself and say, okay, well, I'm out of the game. Come back. Tell me how you got to that answer, and maybe we can talk about some other things. I value your time. I thank you for spending an hour and a half with us. I thank you for even looking into the opportunity of getting into something that is such a need in this community and wherever you are. And with that, I will tell you goodbye.
I'll just also follow up real quick. You'll receive an email with me with further information about registration. I know some of you came in late, so you know, in terms of the completing the registration, you'll get correspondence from me. But I'm still going to send out that homework beforehand, so you can get started with that. And so feel free to communicate back and forth with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for doing this,
You're welcome.
ladies. This is really great.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Great.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Thank you.
We're gonna